Welcome everybody to Dr. Kim's Keynote. We are thrilled to have you joining us today. We are launching our podcast today. We're super excited about it. So I'd like to talk about something that's been really powerful for me in my life, and that is those unexpected powerful moments that happen that we don't see coming, we don't really expect them to be there, but when they happen, we know that they have a very profound impact on our lives. And so ever since I was a little girl, I knew that I wanted to be a teacher. My third grade teacher's name was Mrs. Ligori, and we did this project called An All About Me book. And we really enjoyed it. I can remember we had a black construction page cover, and we took white chalk and wrote all about me and glued our picture on the front. And there were several of those old school ditto sheets. Remember the kind that our teachers used to run off of, like that ditto machine, and then they would bring them in the classroom where you can smell them go, and we're like, ooh, it probably really wasn't good for little children to inhale that. But in any event, we always knew that something special was coming when we had those new, sheets into our All About Me book. So on the demographic page, I wrote on the line when it said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wrote, I wanted to be a teacher. And so went to college, did so, and started my career in Patterson Public Schools. And I was teaching at School 27, which is the school that I went to as a child. And then I ended up teaching at School 12, which is a wonderful experience. And that's where I experienced one of my most powerful moments. And so I taught fifth grade, and I loved taking my kids out on field trips. I just thought it was really important for them to experience and see different things. So one time we took the children to Passaic County Community College to see a play, and the college wasn't really far away from our school, so we would walk there. And this was a Friday in January of 1996. And we were coming back from the play, and I was walking my children up the stairs back to my classroom, which was room 205. And one of my children told me that another one of my students, we'll call her Sheena, was having an asthma attack. And so I took my children to the corridor where the nurse's office was. I took her by the hand and I walked her into the nurse's office. And I explained to the nurse that she was in need of using her nebulizer. She had her machine there in the nurse's office because she used it every once in a while. And then we called her parents, and they picked her up and brought her home. And so Monday morning when we came back to school, I was called out of my classroom by the administration, and they sent in a prep specialist. So a prep specialist is someone who goes in and covers your class while you have your prep, and they either teach them a special, like an art, music, or science or something like that. And I was outside of my doorway when the prep specialist was inside, and my classroom door had a large glass window so you can see right into the classroom. And I was standing there while my administration was asking me to come down to the office, and I just kept looking at the kids because they started to go nuts. I just couldn't understand what was happening, that their behavior would just change so rapidly. And I told my administration, I said, look, my class is, something's going on. And they're like, we really need you to come with us. And I really didn't want to leave the class. And so there in the hallway, my administration told me that my little girl was at a local hospital on life support. And I said, I'm sorry, what did you just say? Even to this day, just that moment was so very difficult. So I went back into my classroom, and the prep specialist left, and my kids were just a wreck. And so we just spent time talking, and I did my best to talk to them about what that meant and such. And then a couple days later, we received notice that our little girl had passed, and it was a really difficult time for my kids and myself. My class and I definitely bonded even further over that experience. I can remember that they would write her name and RIP and draw crosses and whatever they wanted to do on their desks And usually having the children right on the desk is not desirable, but in this case, I certainly allowed it, and I would have given them Sharpie markers to do it if they wanted to, because it was really, really important for them. And we spent the rest of the school year truly remembering and celebrating Sheena's short but powerful life. And so in communicating with my parents and families of what had happened, I put it out there that if they wanted to attend, the viewing with me after school, they were more than welcome. And so I had several children and parents and families wanting to do that. And so we went, we walked around the corner from our school, and it was a small church. And I'll never forget walking in with the children and parents and families who were able to attend, and looking down and seeing my little girl just looking like a princess, just like she was resting or sleeping. And all these years later, I can still remember that moment, and just talking to the kids and the parents. And it was a really, really difficult time for my learning community. And the end of that week was her funeral. And I can remember that we had a very, very difficult time, winter time that year. And there was a huge snowstorm. And I remember driving to the church, which it took me a while to get there because I lived about an hour away at the time. And it was just, the roads were bad and such. But I remember walking into the church, and I had never attended a homecoming celebration before. And I learned a whole new way, right, of celebrating the gift of someone's lives through a homecoming celebration. And I can remember walking into the room, and during this very unexpected, very just tragic, sad situation, I can remember feeling and being enveloped in love. The church was packed, and I remember standing at the back of the room, and I just felt such an amazing power of love and connection, and just observing and listening to all that was shared and said just left such a lasting imprint on my heart. And I've never forgotten that. And to this day, I've looked at, I call it passing, transition, as yes, it's very, very difficult when we lose our loved ones. And I certainly have lost, people in my life who I miss tremendously. But that moment shifted my perspective into really thinking about the celebration, right? And the gift of, in this case, Sheena's life, and the impact it had on my life and in my classroom. And so it was just a wonderful celebration of her short but amazing life. And so I spent the rest of the school year just doing as much with the kids as possible. We had bake sales every Thursday, and the money that we raised, we used to go on field trips. So I took children to places I've never taken my classes before. Took them to the Bronx Zoo, took them to Coney Island. So some had not been to the beach before. We went to the aquarium at Coney Island, and then to Nathan's, which is probably not in alignment with the school lunch nutritional guidelines, but it was fine for that day. And I took a cruise. We took the children on a cruise on the Circle Line around the Hudson. And that was a great experience for them. I can remember when we passed by the Statue of Liberty, they were in awe about how big it really is, right there. And we cruised past Yankee Stadium, the original one. And I can remember their eyes lit up when they saw the big blue letters, Yankee Stadium, on the outside. And it was just, it was a difficult year, but we tried to just do our best to spend time, celebrating the friendships and the relationships that we do have. I can remember a couple weeks after Sheena's homecoming, I was at my desk after school. And something just prompted me to reach over and grab this folder that I had. I still remember that it was a red folder. And every time my kids, shall we say, engaged in some behaviors that weren't the most desirable, I would always have them do a reflection. So I was the peer mediation advisor. And so reflecting, we integrated components of restorative practices, things like that. And so it was really, conflict resolution piece. But part of the practice that we had was embedding reflection into our positive behavior supports piece. And so I can remember it was a couple months before that. I don't remember what happened, what the situation was, but I do remember I had my entire class do a reflection. And I had those reflection papers in that red folder on my desk. I pulled out the red folder and I opened it up and I took the stack of papers and I just started thumbing through them. And I was looking at them and I went to Sheena's paper. And I had read them all, but I went back to hers and she had written a whole full page, front and back. And I will never ever forget the last sentence that she wrote on that reflection paper before signing her name at the bottom. And this is what she said, and this is her direct quote. She said, "Everyone has good inside of them, they just don't always show it." And I can remember rereading that at that moment and saying to myself, what wisdom, right? What wisdom for that 10-year-old to share that special, beautiful spirit of love and light. I was so taken back and it just felt this wave of just peace and love and light came over me. And I looked at the paper and I said to myself, I will never ever forget this. And I will do my very best to remember to always focus on the good, even during those very, very challenging times where it can be hard to do that. And at that moment, it was one of those unexpected, powerful moments that I had because Sheena's message really just left a footprint on my heart. And I made the commitment to her to show up of how I choose to show up in the world and focus on the positive, the being optimistic. And sometimes kindness can be mistaken for weakness. And sometimes we extend kindness and grace to others where we may not get it back. But I promise you that you will get it back. And that when we can see past the behaviors or the unkind words or whatever is going on, there's a reason for that. And if we can just extend that kindness and grace and peel back a few of the layers and just remember that innate goodness and kindness in all of us, it's when we feel disconnected to our inner being and our authentic selves where we have a tendency to engage in some actions, behaviors, or words that may not be reflective of that inner light that we all have. So that's one of my unexpected, powerful moments from my beautiful, bright little angel, Sheena, who definitely left a footprint on my heart. And I would love to hear about your unexpected, powerful moment that left a footprint on your heart. So if you can please say in the comments, maybe share yours. We would love to hear it. And we're incredibly grateful for sharing of yourselves because it's super powerful when we do that. And thank you again for tuning in. I wish you a wonderful, fabulous day. In our next podcast, we're going to have a very special guest, and we're going to be talking about personal development, and we look forward to seeing you then. Have a great day, stay well, and remember to kick it with kindness.